Shabbat Shalom, everybody. It's Rob Shmuel ben Yehoshua, Rabbi Stephen Epstein, with this week's Parsha, with this week's 10-minute Torah, Parsha Pinchas. Yeah, you see I'm a little dressed down, but we'll get my shark's tooth there. But I did it for a reason. Look at the shirt. Chala if you need me. So a bunch of years ago, I was teaching Hebrew to some adults. And during the course, as we started, somebody said, well, can we do a bar mitzvah or b'nai mitzvah? And I said, sure. I was into it. So we did an adult b'nai mitzvah. I say b'nai because there was four. And we did an afternoon, a Saturday afternoon bar mitzvah. This is a time when traditionally there's a Torah reading. So during Shabbat morning, Shachrit, the morning service that you all know and come to love, I hope, we do the full reading. Now, in conservative Judaism, it's a triennial. We do a third of the portion, and we take turns: first part, second part, third part. The triennial cycle. More Orthodox circles, more traditional circles, they do the whole portion, and then Saturday afternoon they do a Torah service, as they do Monday morning and Thursday morning. They do a more modest Torah service where there's only three aliyot, and those three aliyot, they take the first full aliyah and they divide it into three, and that's kind of how they do that. So they do three readings. So what I did, I assigned the readings to the four people. One of them did the first the first aliyah, the first reading, about 3 or 4 verses. Second one did the next one, and the third and the fourth shared the third, and that was our adult b'nai mitzvah. And one of the things they gave me, to thank me for it, was this shirt. So they said they got me this shirt. They thought it was perfect because one of the things I would say is, let me know if holler, let me know if you need me. So came good. Okay. So that's the story behind this shirt. Another story, something that we're doing at my synagogue, something that I'm really passionate about, is getting more and more people involved in the service. No, I don't want to put myself out of business, but I do believe that Jews should have a sort of a rudimentary ability to be able to lead a service, to know what they're doing when they come to a prayer service, not just mumbling a bunch of stuff because people have been doing it for thousands of years, but rather what it means. So last week, we had some people that have been studying with me Hebrew. And I looked at them, I said, how's your Hebrew? And they said, it's pretty good. I said, okay, this is what we're going to do. And this is sanctioned by the conservative movement. The Rabbinical Assembly has kind of said this is a very, a proper way to read the Torah. I said, of course they were first, I can't read from the Torah. I said, no, here's what's going to happen. I pointed to one of them. I said, you're going to read the Aliyah. And I pointed to the other one. I said, you're going to follow him in the Torah, and you're going to point to the word as he reads it. So he's reading it with vowels and a cantillation, and she's pointing to the words as he reads. They felt empowered. It was a beautiful event. They were on top of the world, and I'm going to do that with more and more people. Not, of course, all of it, but something happens. I take a vacation or I get sick. I typically don't get sick, but if I were, do we have people that can fill in and do the service and do the Torah reading? And this way we do. Now, I don't know that these people would feel comfortable doing this every week for the full reading. That takes a lot of skill. I've been doing this for many years, and I review the reading at least 3 times a day. So when I get up there and I'm looking at a Torah scroll with no vowels or, cantillation, what they call collectively nikud marks, I can basically read fairly well. Okay. All right. Enough of that. Let's talk about Pinchas. So our triennial portion focuses on the Mussaf offerings for Shabbat, Rosh Chodesh, the 3 pilgrimage festivals, Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkot, and also the Mussaf offerings for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. So Mussaf means addition. And these were the additional service. This is the additional service that we have for those specific days. Usually during the week when we're doing our Shachrit service, we typically will go through the morning blessings, Psukei de Zimra, leaving out, of course, the 6, 7 extra Psalms that we do for Shabbat. We'll go into our Shachrit service. We don't do El Adon, and it's actually pretty slight. Then we go into Tiparach Serenu, which is called the Kiddush Yotzer, which contains the first and second blessing before the Shema. We've got the full Shema, then we have a blessing afterwards. We go into an Amidah, the Tefillah, which we call it the standing silent prayer, different than Shabbat because there are 19 blessings. The middle 13 are the one that's replaced with the one larger blessing for Shabbat, and these are supplications. We're asking for things, good health, accept our repentance, bring us back to Israel, restore the Davidic reign, things like that, which, of course, we don't do on Shabbat because we don't ask for anything because our lives are complete. Okay, so then we do our, like I said, Monday and Tuesday, there's a Torah service. And then we go right into Ashrei. There's a couple other things, and then we go into Aleinu when we finish up with the Mourner's Kaddish. So that's the focus of the prayer service. So how do we distinguish between these special days and the mundane or the secular? One of the ways is the Mussaf service, the additional service that calls to attention the specific day that we're involved in. So Rosh Chodesh, for example, what we would do is after we get done with the Torah service, we would do those extra then we go right into a Mussaf for Rosh Chodesh, special Mussaf, special additional service. Now, some places, some more liberal maybe, and I think the Reform movement, they don't do Mussaf service. For me, I kind of have an issue with that because this is what sets it apart. This is what makes it special. Otherwise, you got somebody coming in, and this is the rationale for making sure that you pay attention to how many aliyahs you have. Somebody walks into the synagogue. Of course, this is in the days before we had 24/7 calendars all over the place, mass printing, things like that. People might think it's not Shabbat, or they know it's Shabbat because you did 7 aliyot. You know, if it's Rosh Hashanah, you're supposed to only do 5. If you do 6, people are going to think it's Yom Kippur. Why aren't I fasting? So that was an indication. But in the modern times, people see that, well, the offering means we want to restore the temple, which we kind of do. And if we restore the temple, are we going to go back to doing offerings, i.e. sacrifices, i.e., as some people think, cruelty to animals? We're going to be cutting up animals again. I don't know. I know that I've heard that there are people in Israel that are studying the Torah for this in anticipating the restoration of the temple. I personally don't think that's going to happen. One of the maxims in Judaism is that if you do something long enough as a tradition, it becomes law. Perfect example, the Torah says 1 day of Passover, 1 day of Sukkot, 1 day of Shavuot. Out here in the diaspora, we have it for 2 days. And why did we have it for 2 days? So that people wouldn't miss the day. We've extended it. We put a fence around the Torah. Other people say, well, wait a minute, you've added to the commandment. And people don't see it that way. And of course, 2 Jews, 5, 6, 7 opinions, whatever it is. So the question is, now that everybody knows the calendar, it's been standardized. Even people in the depths of Africa that are practicing Judaism that may not have internet, they're not going to go out and look at the moon and figure it out that way. It's, because you need the 2 witnesses to report to Sanhedrin. There isn't a local Sanhedrin. How do you know it's the first of the month? So there's got to be some way. So the calendar was standardized many years ago. So we know when Passover is going to fall in the year, 2285, who knows, right? So why do we need to have the 2 days anymore? Because we've been doing it for so long, it's a tradition. So since we haven't been doing offerings for the last 2,000 years, are we in fact going to go back to slicing up animals, putting them on a barbecue? And, I'm sorry to be gross, but that's basically what it is. as a way of communicating with God. We've been praying. For me, that's a more direct way. You're speaking directly to God, each individual. Maybe in a couple of 100 years, we'll evolve beyond that and we'll be meditating or something using, and there's some meditation in Judaism. There is. Maybe that'll replace the prayer service. I don't know. So that's kind of my feeling. But the point is that there's very specific instructions about honoring that day. And for me, if you're not including that in the service, the day doesn't have that meaning. You don't just mumble it in Hebrew and, okay, there it is. Okay. So I've gone on my rant. I'll leave you with that for your opinion. Shabbat Shalom. Thanks for putting up with it. And I hope you enjoyed it. You can give me feedback. My door's always open. Okay. Shabbat Shalom. We'll see you at services.